Hello, everyone. Welcome to Oakland Creates Art Makers series interview with Juba Kalamka. Can you pronounce your name? Because I know I just destroyed it.
No, you didn't, Kalamka. That was right.
Perfect. So I've been wanting to interview Juba for the longest time. I want to say that I first initially saw you on the documentary. I think it was Pick Up the Mic.
That was that maybe okay.
And then I saw you actually in person on the bus, maybe, God, 2010, maybe?
Wow.
And then actually ran into you and had a conversation because I didn't talk to you at that moment, but I had a
Right.
conversation. I think it was at either APE or
Been
the
a
alternative press
Yeah.
or one of the cons, one of the Zine Fester cons. And so this is super exciting. I'm going to share my screen and ask you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's go here. Um, all right. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about you. I have the bio here on screen if people want to pause and take a shot of this. But tell me, in your own words, a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I if somebody asked me about uh what about me and who I am, and I think that go would go to the uh some of my upbringing and the basis of what the get is for me around being an artist is around being a person is that I find the best modality has been for me and what's works and what's been the most enjoyable and most workable for me is to be is of service. Um,
Nice.
what that looks like to community. That's a get for me. And like, how can I help? How can I be useful? I've been performing uh, forever. In the way that you know kids perform around the house. There's a long lost tape of me singing "Let's Get It On" at 3 years old that we can't find. And I actually do have audio that I'll send you of me singing songs with my mom and my sister from 1973 that was taped around the same time that
Wow.
digitized for me. It was kind of weird to have. Um, but yeah, I come from a family of performers and a family of educators and community workers. Um, I grew up in Afrocentrist education in the 70s in Chicago. It's sort of the end tail of that popular movement in the by the mid 70s that I grew up in,
Okay.
and was always performing in like the school plays. If you can imagine what school plays were like in Black nationalist schools and in 1975.
So you basically were reciting either Malcolm X or Franklin Douglas.
Yeah, the first we did that was a long form Martin Luther King play, but there was one that was the short monologues. That was me as Malcolm X, and I got to play Malcolm X because I wore glasses, I think, and
Wow.
because I could read, and because I read. I was a vociferous and voracious. I should say, reader, and I played. I was 6, and I played. Yeah, and I played Malcolm X in the school play. And I was wearing all white and had a bow tie, and I can remember, and I had plaits, and I had a little mini afro, and I had plaits
Oh, nice.
head and playing Malcolm X.
Well,
Um,
you're being super humble. I mean, you're an amazing singer, writer, artist, spoken word artist. And so let me try to play a little bit of your work and just kind of talk a little bit about some of the tracks. Let me see if I can actually do this if the sound will work. Can you hear it?
yes,
I am deeper than the deep blue sea on a Thursday before Friday's morn comes to watch me clean.
So I'm not gonna play the whole song, but this is one of the first times that I heard the group Deep Dick Collective and
Uh-huh.
sort of explain a little bit about the and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I could see your face.
Uh-huh.
Explain a little bit about the concept of spoken word or rap over music because I feel like this is something that I think has gotten lost in hip hop in recent times, like the more self-expression, not just the educational piece around hip hop, but just being your true authentic self, no matter what that is and what it looks like. I feel like there's so many trending types of hip hop, but they're all this they sound the same. So
Mhm.
tell a little bit about that group and how because I think there are three members, right?
There were three in our most regular iteration,
Okay.
but there were 11 different people in Deep the Collective over the course of the 8 years that the
Wow.
group
Okay.
was together. And the three that are on the cover of the greatest hits, if you will,
Yeah.
um, record, myself, Timim, and JB were the most regular
Okay.
for the longest period of time. Yeah, and that was in part because all that we were all uh, the sort of peak of our activity was while all of us we're all living in Oakland.
I was gonna say they're all in Oakland, and I feel like you all had such unique and individual perspectives. And like I said, can you talk a little bit about why you came together as a collective
Yeah.
and in the
So yeah, so and I haven't sent you that. So there was a piece that ran in the Chicago Reader about uh my career in Chicago in the '90s when I first performed, like and starting in the late '80s when I first started performing hip hop, um, and was in a spoken word scene there that big and co-hosted a party that was sort of the germ that drove the congealing of hip hop community in Chicago, because there were little parties here and everywhere, and it was the first place that from a citywide way that kind of helped start the community. And the group that I was in, He Who Walks Three Ways, we were recording and performing, and we uh, hosted that party. Dero Wicks, who started He Who Walks Three Ways, uh, was and who I was a co we were co MCs in that group. Um, did that party, and I guess that was early, like the first half of 1994.
mm,
Uh,
do you
we
feel like I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do you feel like the I want to say that I feel like you guys were the next sort of iteration from the parties, from the house parties, and
Yeah.
then so how do you feel like that tied in?
Well, I think that like, and that's what I would say about like the whole like if you talk about the complication and sort of messiness of community, there are people who acknowledge that around house music now, but there was a lot of of course there was a lot of homophobia
Mm-hmm.
what's around that, and like we talked about anti-blackness
Right.
that surrounded not just like disco, post-disco, and the development of house music. House music was club music, so there was a way that it could get was DJ based music, so there was a way for it to have parties, um,
Right.
stuff in a way that live music and especially hip hop in the '80s. And that wasn't just Chicago. That just wasn't anywhere except for New York City. That you
Mm-hmm.
had places that really had a proliferation of places where you saw live hip hop music in its
Right.
germinating forms. Um, so that was by 1992 that party happened, and you started having people getting signed by major labels. Hip hop had become its golden age, kind of whatever around that. We just started being referred to that as that. Um, my relationship to it was such. We had a couple of different contexts where like abortive deals and people who might have helped us get signed, and we recorded a couple of demos. The big thing that happened for me, a couple of things happened for me, was that the whole time I was doing, that's not that I didn't enjoy anything I was doing in that scene and have great appreciation, be able to participate in that scene, but um, I I knew I was bisexual when I was 15 years old,
Mm,
um, and was deeply closeted. Even though I had a sister, my oldest sister is a lesbian.
okay.
And there's all kinds of other stories about my family that that I know, but that I won't get into. Um, to that particular pot of tea. Uh, but uh, the part of the thing that was frustrating about that scene was that I didn't freestyle, and what we understood as freestyle being rhyming off the top of the extemporaneous sort of rhyming. I
Right.
refused to do it.
Mm.
And even the times I did it, I wasn't very good at it because I was so terrified of outing myself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I didn't do that. Um, my son was born in the middle of 1994. Um, and so there was and also there was I would say that that was part and parcel of that too, is that there was a way that I was having to be grown.
Hmm.
I'm not saying anybody else would have necessarily, because of course men don't always relate to that like that. I
Right.
had finished college. I was a grown up in a particular way that a lot of the people in the scene weren't necessarily navigating in the same
Right.
way, that I had to be grown in this particular kind of way. That doesn't mean I didn't want to be a musician there, but that was just a way that I was navigating things.
Well,
And
you have
later,
responsibilities that you
yeah,
held yourself accountable for,
yeah.
right?
And that I was moving towards was, it's like I can't be myself. I
Hmm.
I can't ever be myself in this scene. So when that group broke up, I didn't do music for about 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, music, nothing. I did visual art stuff because my undergraduate degree is in graphic design.
Right.
So
Okay.
I did illustrative work, and I was teaching in the public school system in Chicago, and then teaching for foundations, arts foundations in Chicago. Yeah, I wasn't doing music. One day in 1996, I was in Tower Records. Remember Tower Records? I was
Right.
in Tower Records. I was in Tower Records on Clark Street, on the north side, and with my partner, who I eventually moved to the Bay Area with. And there was a copy of Anything That Moves magazine on the rack, and I had never seen. And the
Okay.
cover of the magazine was the one that came out right after that big story in Newsweek came out about bisexuality. Was on the cover of Newsweek in
Yeah.
1996.
For context, that's what they say about bisexual
Yeah,
people.
anything that moves. Yeah, anything. Yeah. Bisexual will fuck anything that moves. So and I was like, I found this glossy, well produced magazine on a newsstand that was at Tower Records, and I was just like, I remember standing there shaking
Wow.
and saying, like, if we move to the Bay Area, I'm going to write for this magazine. And it was through that magazine that I first encountered Rainbow Flavor, because there was a review of Rainbow Flavor. I don't know if it was that issue, if it was the next issue, but when one of their first EP came out, there was a review of it, and I said, "Wow, we moved to the Bay. I'm gonna find these cats," and I
Right.
did. And actually joined Rainbow Flavor. That was actually the first group that I was in, and I did some solo recording with Dick Deluxe, um, who was the bassist of Clubfoot Orchestra. It was an avant-garde
Yeah.
uh, band uh, that was mostly active in the 80s. He became a mentor, and so concurrent to finding community in the Bay, uh, I was having the opportunity to sort of flesh out some stuff and sort of get the cobwebs out of my head with the
Nice.
recording, which actually was a spoken word recording I did called Pretensions. Um,
You feel like you're able to just be your more full,
yeah,
authentic self within that. That's amazing. And
yeah,
thank you for sharing that story because I didn't know that you had a degree in graphic design.
yeah.
And so we'll talk about that more later. Also, let me share another audio clip and talk about that a little bit as well. Let's go to this next one. Where are we? So this is the one I asked you this album if I could put on behind my drawings.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's so amazing with all the different sort of noise garden or noise. um, what's the word I'm looking for?
Music, concrete,
Yeah,
sounds and noises, and yeah,
yeah, awesome. And just using sound as almost a spiritual passageway too.
yeah, yeah.
I'm simply stuck with that. George has recently admitted that when he hired David Prowse, thought that was his Darth Vader. See, I was over 6 foot, 6.5 feet tall.
So do you think that incorporating the samples, because I noticed there's samples from Star Wars, the interview, and then I think there are two different chants. So
Yeah,
do you think that the not only the title codes switchings, but just the idea around, I want to say blackness, but what it means for black people to have a certain spiritual practice or vocal practice,
yeah.
were those intentions or were those things that maybe you developed in that album?
Those were there, and that was really the first. I had been playing with SoundCloud, but that was the first album that I did that was just. So I was there. There was a lot of feeling my way about what I wanted to do in that, but the title to it was about, uh, and also too because uh, Black Things Tomorrow as a parenthetical and with a question mark,
Mm,
too as well was very purposeful,
wow.
um, just in terms of a conversation about, uh, what is the Black future, what is the Black tomorrow, what is a Black thing. Um, that's actually a reference from the Afrocentric school I went to, and it was a school closing and opening chant, and it was like a whole song. We'd be clapping and singing, "We have done Black things today,
Mm,
and we're gonna do Black things again tomorrow." And that was what, and so that was where that came from. But putting that with code switchings was about questions and about navigating and trying to have a little bit of a conversation about what that was like to enter that, to be in that cultural rubric as a child,
mhm.
as opposed to like going to college in 1973 and coming back with an afro and having your parents be freaked out and pissed off.
Wow.
um,
Okay.
there's just a way that you get to that you either internalize it, the way that you navigate the stories, the hero history, and it's like, and the complications of it's like, that, uh some things that were not, just like, just my a part about just about my relation to nationalism in itself, but
Mm,
also at the same time, this conceptually and community wise, in just terms of what people tried to do, that I stand over on the shoulders of. Like my given name isn't Juba Kalamka. My mother started calling me Juba
mhm.
the day I was born, and found out it was a name later, and I got Kalamka in a naming ceremony,
Okay.
at Kwanzaa. But my parents have never. I'm legally named after my dad, but neither of them have ever called me by his name.
Wow.
So that kind of like what you're saying about that, about the power
Yeah.
of, about the power of that, but about the code switching. I mean, what we understand about code switchings is like, this is how we talk for safety,
Right.
in terms of navigating the community, or just code switchings as Black, code switchings as queer, code switchings as Black and queer, and what, there's like the sub, how you could have a QAAVE, you
Right.
about what that, about what that looks like and what that means. What did the future look like in that moment, just on the basis of like how
But
we're navigating the
but
language.
it's very, sorry to interrupt. It's very
No,
much
it's okay.
about accessibility too,
Hmm.
because we don't necessarily have to have this conversation
Right.
in standard English, and we would know what we're talking
Right,
about.
right,
So the
right,
accessibility and willingness to
right,
share. It's a conscious decision that we're making, speaking in the way that we're speaking now.
Right. Yes.
Right? And so that is always interesting to me. But more about the music too, the idea around like spirituality, African traditional religions and Western Christian religion, and how it's handed down to Black people that were enslaved during chattel slavery,
Uh-huh.
and how we translated it, how we sort of developed a way of code switching and transmuted. The sounds are the same. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the same words, but it's the same spirit, right?
Yeah.
So I find that terribly interesting too, because as someone who I didn't grow up in church, but went to church and very much mindful of sound, just the hymns and the repetitive nature and the um, sort of things that we did on the continent of Africa to this call and response that we still carry into Western Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
and even the I don't want to call it just I don't want to call it sound, but the hymns, the evocation of spirits in the same way that we do when we're doing morning hymns or uh, worship, right?
Yeah.
And I find it just it's all one and the same. And because of code switching, we can be singing about Jesus, but we're not singing about Jesus. You know
Right.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. That
That
was,
I
yeah.
find I find that super interesting in that the type of music that you're producing, because that's that same universal vibration, right? And if you believe in the spirit of oneness and that we're all part of God and is within all of us, that is it crosses all boundaries.
Y-
So that's really fascinating. When I listened to that album, I was like, oh, okay, there's so many layers to this.
I think that like also what's interesting about that is people like it's funny because people uh will say that like they're like like you told me like you're an atheist, how do you sing about all this stuff? I said because I got a grandmama. I don't know.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I said
Exactly.
that, and it's just like, or just also people making the mistake of like how like I'm not your like and like that, saying that like I am an atheist is not saying I don't have a context of the ineffable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really hard thing for people to grab sometimes. I think sometimes people are being obtuse
I
about
do.
it, but I think a lot of
Oh,
times people don't they aren't able to disentangle that, in the sense of like, or just like when I joke about it, I'm like, I grew up on the west side of Chicago and I'm Black, you know, and or just like grew up in hegemonic cultural Christianity and Black
mm-hmm.
hegemonic particulars of
Yeah,
Black hegemonic cultural Christianity, and listen to the radio, like that's what you're listening to on the radio on
exactly. Yeah,
Sunday,
that formed
or,
you.
or more importantly, just about the performative thread of that.